We just love when our old pal Meredith Vieira and her husband Richard Cohen stopped by to say hi.
Mostly with Richard, but Meredith, you're also good too. Richard was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when he was 25 years old, and ever since he's been on a journey, not just with his health, but with the concept of hope.
It's fascinating. He chronicles that journey in the new book. It's called Chasing Hope, a patient's deep dive into stem cells, faith, and the future. And Richard and Meredith, hi.
Good morning.
It's nice, first of all, it's just nice to have Meredith, just for you to walk in.
Well, so nice to see everybody.
Around.
Congrats on the new book.
Everyone, just Meredith is like, she's like you wrote the book, which we're going to talk about, but for Meredith,
we don't have to really. It's this.
No, this is all about her.
It's the return of sunshine. I mean,
there's plenty of sunshine.
We bask in your warmth, and it's so awesome to see you and tease you. But Richard, this book is incredible, and talk about a labor of love. How long have you been working on it, and what did it take to really delve into this concept of hope?
Well, I think everything changed when we were asked to go to the Vatican and to attend a stem cell conference, and I chaired the opening panel there. And in preparing to go, I learned how much work is being done with stem cells. And then when we were there with all these scientists and people, I realized that everybody's doing stem cell work now.
And you
that
felt
we
this
didn't
little
know about.
Flicker of this thing called hope.
Well,
that you said you hadn't felt in a long time.
Well, look, I was diagnosed when I was 25 years old, and essentially told there is no hope. And so I didn't even know the word. And
what's the expression you use? Diagnose and adios.
They used to say diagnose and adios.
Oh, wow. See you later. Yeah.
Nothing much we can do.
Well, living with Meredith, because when I look at Meredith, I think someone who's hopeful, someone who sees the bright side, someone who says, you know, Richard, no, tomorrow's going to be a better day. Meredith, from your perspective, because you were living with Richard through all this, how did you maintain that kind of optimism, or did you?
I think if it's in your personality, it's there, even if it's just under the surface some days and not really apparent to others. So I've always sort of been a hopeful person, and I always believed that somehow we would find something for Richard. But I didn't know the extent of the research that had been done with stem cells either. It just sounded like the Vatican. At the very least, it's a trip to Rome.
Right.
You know, let's do it.
Let's go.
Meredith's got an angle.
Shopping.
Yes, exactly. Well, you know what's interesting about it is, and you write so movingly about this in the book, that the stem cells idea, you know, yes, it's the flicker of hope perhaps for yourself, but what really struck you, Richard, was the hope for the future.
No, that's right. I mean, you know, I'm the third member of my family, the third generation to have it, and we've got 3 kids. And I think stem cell therapy is taking over medicine. I think it's the future.
Yeah.
And I think our kids' generation and generations thereafter, they're going to reap the benefits of this, and I think it's going to change a lot of lives.
And you guys spoke movingly last night, your little book thing, and you were talking about how Richard typed this book. I mean, describe that.
Well, first of all, I didn't think he would do a 4th book.
Yeah.
After his 3rd book, I Want to Kill the Dog. I thought that was the end. The dog is fine. 14 years old and will not leave. And then I noticed one day he was sort of, I can tell when the brain is going with Richard, and I'm hearing this word hope. And the next thing I know, he is writing a book. But for Richard to write a book, he's legally blind, and he only has the use of one hand. So imagine somebody every day about 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. at night, face pressed to the computer, typing with one hand. And I would say, why don't you just, you know, talk into a mic and it'll all get transcribed. And Richard was very clear to point out that's not how I write. That's not how I create. So that's why when I said last night, I respect him, I admire him, and we do as a family, but I'm in awe of him.
Yeah. Richard, I guess you really had something to say, because that was not easy.
Yeah.
No, but it worked. It was fun, you know, and having the family there last night was terrific.
Yeah, the kids surprised him.
I think if anyone's going through a difficult time and they read this book, I think it'll give them what they're looking for.
Yeah.
It was worth every second that you spent.
But you know, Richard found hope, but he's still not a believer,
right,
so to speak. So I mentioned last night, I just came back from Rome. They had their 4th conference, and I got the opportunity to meet the Pope, which I had never done, and I had the rosary beads blessed because I'm not taking any chances. You know? I just think, I want that Pope.
Meredith will have enough faith for everybody. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Great to see you.